Today, I wanted to record a video answer to a question that I actually answered late last night, posted on Quora. This question is perfect for the podcast because it is specific to combining cold email with phone calls, cold calls. The question specifically is, can cold emailing for selling B2B SaaS be successful at all if it's not followed up by a phone call? So let's dig in. In short, I believe the answer is yes, but not for all industries. That's my caveat there to protect myself. But I have sold numerous SaaS products with cold outreach alone and automated systems that did not involve a phone call. I have not sold all of them, but a good enough variety to believe that most can be done. And I'll throw in the caveats in the answer here. Now, the criteria that I would suggest is necessary to sell a SaaS product in the B2B space without including a phone call in the process of selling that SaaS product are these 6 items. I believe your audience needs to be somewhat tech savvy. And I'll go into detail on each of these later. I believe your product has to be a somewhat lower price point, less than $500 per month, let's say. I believe you have to have a free trial, whether it's 14 days, 30 days, what have you, or a free version of your tool. I believe you need to have good onboarding. So if you do have a free trial, onboarding helps you convert them into a sale, which is what this question is asking, without involving a person. I believe that you have to, whoever you is, whether you're the CEO or the salesperson, you have to have some amount of credibility in selling the product. So somewhat of a personal brand, whether that's people knowing you on LinkedIn or Quora, or on your website showing some sort of testimonials about the process, the customer success process, the sales process, to give that sort of credibility and verification. And I believe finally that you need to have a well-timed and multi-touch approach to your cold outreach, which is what we talk about a lot on this podcast. So back to point number 1. So your audience. I have attempted to sell SaaS products in certain audiences where the target prospect was either not very tech savvy or not around a computer often. That makes it very difficult. Not impossible, but does make it difficult. In those cases, a phone call is sometimes necessary. And a good example of that is the restaurant industry. The conversation I had recently was specific to targeting restaurant owners. And I did agree with the person that it is very difficult to sell a restaurant owner on a SaaS product without calling them. Now, another industry example is manufacturing. I worked in the manufacturing industry on a project for a little while, and it was very, very tough to automate the sales process. So bringing them into your funnel, closing them in the funnel, getting them to upgrade, what have you, without actually spending time on the phone with that person. And the next level to that is actually doing screen shares, which makes it even harder when they're not a tech savvy industry. So not tech savvy, it makes it very difficult, and not being online a lot obviously adds another layer of complexity to that. The next point there, where I would say involving a phone call is not necessary, is having a low price point. You know, if your price point in that sector is on average low, meaning you have competitors that are at a higher price point, this obviously makes it easier for you to automate the close process, because you can target people who have already bought a product that is at a higher price point than yours. There is no ceiling to that. I would just throw out a number like $500 because my personal experience has shown me that I can automate a sales process using cold outreach on SaaS products under $500. So that's just a personal experience thing, but I know people who have sold much higher price SaaS products than that using cold outreach. So to each his own. Number three, I believe that you need to have a very good funnel to sell a SaaS product without using a cold call. The funnel itself is everything from your homepage or whatever your landing page is, all the way through the pricing page, through your checkout screens. So your funnel needs to be, or show, I should say, credibility. It needs to show trust. It needs to show thought leadership, case studies, clear CTAs, calls to action, and clear value propositions throughout. So, they come into your funnel from a cold outreach campaign, like a cold email or cold messaging campaign. And they get to your funnel, they get to your landing page. That needs to reinforce the same value proposition that you had in your cold outreach. They start to go through your funnel. They need to see testimonials. They need to see other companies in their sector that are using your product. They need to see, hopefully, your face at some point. And I'll dig into onboarding in a second. But keep all that messaging in line and show credibility, logos of customers that you have on board, trust, obviously your customer testimonials, thought leadership, some case studies, some stuff that you've done, and be clear with your copy, with your CTAs and their value propositions throughout. Number 4, I believe that you do need to have your onboarding intact and really buttoned up in order to sell without using a cold call or a screen share, for example. What is onboarding? Onboarding is everything that the customer sees and experiences after they click to join, register, buy. It's everything they see once they enter their dashboard. So they, as well as receive in their inbox. So it includes your onboarding emails and your onboarding messaging. But if your onboarding process is weak and you do have a free trial, your chances of closing that person without a cold call are very low. But if you have great onboarding, meaning, you greet them with a nice video tutorial of how to use the product. You have tool tips, in product, on page onboarding help that can be, your make or break to closing these people without having to get on the phone and close them over the phone. Further, you can use a product like Intercom. Intercom allows you to talk to these people through the entire onboarding process. So you can display a message full screen or in a little chat widget saying, "Hey, welcome to my product. Here's a couple steps to get started. I'm right here. I'm, being the customer success person, is right here to help you. Just chat me if you need anything," for example. And you can show a different Intercom message on every single page inside their dashboard, which is super useful. The other product I'd recommend to check out if you're looking at buttoning up your onboarding is WalkMe, spelled correctly.com. And it allows you to create really custom onboarding experiences. So you can have a different onboarding experience for a premium level account versus a free account. You can even go a little deeper into that and customize based on audiences and campaigns that are coming into your funnel and really create awesome onboarding experiences. And another tip there is I'd recommend showing your onboarding experiences as either the next person that's going to help them, so a director of sales or director of customer success, or the CEO themselves. So the CEO should welcome them into the product and then match that with the onboarding messaging. So if you are walking them through as a customer success person inside their dashboard, send an email from the customer success person with some FAQs and some articles to read and some documentation to check out. Keep those messages and the onboarding screens and onboarding messaging all synced up. Next thing is I believe that you do need is a strong word, but you should have, especially at higher price points, some level of thought leadership and personal branding in order to sell a SaaS product without having a cold call. And what do I mean by that? I mean, if I'm researching a SaaS product that's somewhat expensive, let's just say a $300 a month SaaS product, and I start seeing the CEO of blank company show up when I'm researching this product. So in search, that person's articles are showing up. On Quora, that person's answers are showing up. On LinkedIn, they're very, very active and posting a lot about their industry. the CEO of Troops, does a really good job of this. I was reading one of his posts recently, and he shows a lot of thought leadership. And that is important because if I'm buying your product, I need to feel comfortable in the amount of care and the amount of research and the amount of expertise that went into developing that product. So show your thought leadership, answer a lot of questions on Quora, post a lot, and really get your face, not just your brand, but your face. Your CEO of the company, show your face, and you can do that by answering these questions because your little profile image shows up right next to the question. Like mine will show up here. That shows thought leadership. It shows I kind of know what I'm talking about, or at least I think I do by answering these questions. And if the person believes that you do know what you're talking about, your chances of closing that person without having to call them are much higher. Thought leadership and personal branding. And finally, your outreach. So this is really important to me, and it's important to this podcast, and it's crucial to this question is, how does someone close a SaaS product without making a phone call? Well, you have really good cold outreach sequences that do not involve a phone call. And when I say outreach and I don't say cold emailing, outreach involves every touch point that your customer gets, whether it's manual or programmatic, that involves your brand or your face, every individualized communication. So that could be everything from a LinkedIn connection request, a follow on Quora, an upvote on Quora, a like on your article, a comment on your article, direct message on Twitter. Those are very low intrusive, less intrusive touch points that you can involve in a cold outreach sequence to help kind of warm up the client to your brand without annoying them. Then you come in with a cold email, or maybe a little bit more intrusive, but not quite as intrusive as a cold email. A little bit more intrusive, but less intrusive than a cold email, like a cold LinkedIn message, for example. You want to let them know that they exist, let them know who you are, and invite them to connect. Send a LinkedIn message, right? Now, there are tools that allow us to automate this. We don't have to manually send every potential prospect a direct message on Twitter, a follow, a connection request. We can automate this, and we talk about that in a couple other episodes, and I answer the questions on Quora, which I link to here, with some details about how to automate those cold outreach sequences. And then finally, you set them into your cold email specific sequence, and maybe you pepper in some additional touch points, follows, likes, comments, all that kind of stuff, to keep them aware of your brand while your cold email sequence is going out. That's number one. So setting up a cold outreach process that includes a more nurturing level of communication, not just cold email. Then your copy is very key. So in order to get positive replies, I talk about positive replies, and then I talk about going into getting into their inbox. Getting positive replies, you have to make sure that your copy is good. You have to make sure that you're doing a few things, and I don't want to go into detail here, but check all those boxes, make sure you're doing it correctly, make sure the timing is correct, make sure it involves multiple touch points on different platforms, and involves some credibility and obviously links to your thought leadership. And if you do all that, you can in fact close a prospect to a certain extent without involving a cold call. And I will throw in this at the very end. Sometimes the cold call itself does not do you any favors. I know it seems like it would be better, but not everyone's the best at cold calling, and some people take offense. So I'm a big fan of really nurturing, focus on the product, focus on, kind of really creating an awesome experience for the people that are making it into your funnel. Focus on thought leadership and create that system that is going to do as much as possible for you without involving that cold call. If at all possible, I would never like to cold call a customer, but sometimes it's necessary. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed this, and we've got a really good episode tomorrow about the actual setup to make sure your emails are inboxing, so records and verification, all that good stuff. So I'm excited about that. So check back for that tomorrow, and have a great day.